You've been told that creating wealth requires grinding, hustling, and forcing your way through obstacles. You've been sold the lie that manifestation is about visualizing harder, affirming louder, and pushing against reality until it bends to your will. But what if I told you that quantum shift power, the real mechanism behind effortless wealth creation, only activates when you do the exact opposite of everything you've been taught? What if the billionaires who seem to attract money effortlessly know something about quantum mechanics that they're not sharing in their motivational speeches? What if there's a fundamental force in the universe that responds not to your effort, but to your state of allowing? And what if every time you try to force wealth into your life, you're actually creating quantum interference that blocks the very thing you're desperately seeking? I'm about to share with you something that goes against everything the self-help industry wants you to believe, because there's no money in teaching you something that's actually simple. There's no profit in telling you that wealth flows naturally when you understand how to work with quantum fields instead of against them. The truth is, quantum shift power is your birthright, but it's been hidden behind layers of complexity that serve everyone except you. Here's what's really happening when you force. Every time you push, strain, and try to manipulate your way to wealth, you're broadcasting a frequency of lack to the quantum field. Think about it. When you force, what are you really saying to the universe? You're saying, I don't have this. I need to make it happen. I can't trust that it's already on its way. That energy of desperation, of not having, becomes your dominant vibration, and the quantum field, which is always listening, always responding, gives you more of exactly that, the experience of not having. But here's where quantum physics reveals something extraordinary. The observer effect, one of the most fundamental principles in quantum mechanics, shows us that the act of observation changes the outcome of an experiment. When scientists observe particles, those particles behave differently than when they're not being observed. The very act of watching, of paying attention, influences reality at the most fundamental level. Now, what if I told you that your consciousness is the observer and your financial reality is the experiment? When you're forcing, you're observing from a place of lack. You're watching your bank account with the energy of not enough. You're looking at opportunities with the vibration of I need this to work. And just like those particles in the quantum experiments, your financial reality responds to the quality of your observation. It gives you more of what you're observing from, the experience of needing, of lacking, of not having enough. But quantum shift power works differently. It activates when you become the observer who watches from abundance, even before abundance appears in your physical reality. It's like tuning into a radio station. You don't create the radio waves, they're already there, filling the space around you. You just adjust your receiver to match the frequency you want to experience. Wealth isn't something you create through force. It's something you tune into through alignment. Let me give you a real-world example of how this works. Think about the last time you lost something important, maybe your keys or your phone. Remember how frantically you searched, tearing apart cushions, checking the same places over and over again? The more desperately you looked, the more elusive the item became. But then, the moment you gave up, the moment you relaxed and said, fine, I'll deal with this later, what happened? You found it. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped forcing. You allowed the natural intelligence of the universe to guide you to what you were seeking. This isn't coincidence. This is quantum mechanics in action. When you're in a state of forcing, your consciousness creates what physicists call coherence collapse. You're so focused on the problem, so locked into the frequency of not having, that you literally cannot perceive the solutions that are right in front of you. But the moment you shift into allowing, your consciousness expands, your perception opens, and you become available to receive what was there all along. The wealthy understand this intuitively, even if they don't know the science behind it. They've learned to hold their desires lightly, to want without needing, to prefer without demanding. They've discovered that wealth flows through them, not to them. They've become channels for abundance rather than desperate seekers of it. And this shift in their relationship to wealth is what creates their quantum shift power. But here's what the self-help industry doesn't want you to know. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending you don't want money. This isn't about spiritual bypassing or denying your desires. Quantum shift power is about understanding the mechanics of how consciousness interacts with the field of infinite possibility. It's about working with the laws of quantum physics instead of against them. When you force, you're operating from what neuroscientists call the sympathetic nervous system, your fight-or-flight response. Your brain literally cannot access its higher creative functions when you're in this state. You become reactive instead of receptive, closed instead of open, contractive instead of expansive. And from this state, the only strategies available to you are force-based strategies. You can only see solutions that require pushing, grinding, and struggling. But when you shift into allowing, something remarkable happens in your neurology. You activate what researchers call the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest response. In this state, your brain produces different brain waves, your heart creates different rhythmic patterns, and your entire electromagnetic field shifts into what's called coherence. And it's from this state of coherence that quantum shift power becomes available. Coherence isn't just a nice spiritual concept. It's a measurable state where your heart, mind, and emotions are in alignment, creating a powerful electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your physical body. When you're in coherence, you're literally broadcasting a different signal to the quantum field. Instead of the chaotic, desperate frequency of forcing, you're transmitting the clear, powerful signal of someone who knows their value, trusts the process, and is open to receive. Think about water for a moment. When water is forced through a narrow pipe under high pressure, it creates turbulence, resistance, and inefficiency. But when water flows naturally down a riverbed, it moves with grace, power, and ease, carving through solid rock over time, not through force, but through consistent, aligned action. Your relationship with wealth works the same way. Force creates turbulence and resistance. Allowing creates flow and natural power. Now, I can already hear what some of you are thinking. But if I don't force, if I don't push, won't I just become lazy? Won't I just sit around waiting for money to fall from the sky? This is the misconception that keeps most people trapped in the force-based paradigm. Allowing isn't passive. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right things from the right state of consciousness. When you're in quantum shift power, when you're operating from allowing instead of forcing, your actions become inspired rather than desperate. You move when you feel called to move, not when fear tells you to move. You make decisions from clarity rather than panic. You take risks from confidence rather than desperation. And the universe responds to this energy completely differently. Here's a practical way to understand this. Imagine you're at a networking event and you're desperately trying to find someone who can help your business. You're scanning the room, interrupting conversations, pushing your business card on anyone who will take it. How does that energy feel? How do people respond to you when you're operating from that frequency? Now imagine you're at the same event, but you're genuinely interested in connecting with people, sharing value, and being of service. You're present, you're listening, you're contributing to conversations rather than just looking for what you can get. Which version of you is more magnetic? Which version attracts better opportunities? The difference between these two approaches isn't just social, it's quantum. When you're forcing, you're collapsing possibilities. When you're allowing, you're expanding them. The quantum field responds to your energetic signature, and that signature is determined not by what you do, but by the consciousness from which you do it. But here's where this gets really interesting. Most people think that allowing means lowering their standards or settling for less. They think that if they stop forcing, they'll have to accept whatever scraps the universe throws their way. But quantum physics shows us exactly the opposite. When you're in a state of true allowing, when you're operating from quantum shift power, you actually become more selective, not less. You become a magnet for higher quality opportunities because you're no longer willing to accept anything that comes from force or desperation. Think about the most successful people you know personally, not the ones you see on social media who are always talking about how hard they're grinding, but the ones who seem to effortlessly attract opportunities, relationships, and abundance. Watch how they move through the world. Notice their energy. They have what I call quantum confidence. They know their value, they trust their path, and they're willing to wait for the right opportunities rather than jumping at every possibility that comes along. This quantum confidence isn't arrogance or entitlement. It's a deep knowing that they're connected to an infinite field of possibility, and that their job isn't to force outcomes, but to stay aligned with their highest vision and take inspired action when it feels right. They understand that the universe is always conspiring in their favor, not because they're special, but because that's how quantum mechanics actually works when you're operating from the right frequency. The quantum field is neutral. It doesn't care about your past, your background, or your current circumstances. It only responds to your present moment vibration, your electromagnetic signature, your state of consciousness right now. And when that signature shifts from forcing to allowing, from desperation to trust, from scarcity to abundance consciousness, the field has no choice but to respond with matching experiences. But here's the challenge. Our entire culture is built around the mythology of force. We're taught from childhood that if we want something, we need to work harder, try harder, push harder. We're conditioned to believe that struggle equals worthiness, that ease equals laziness, that if it's not difficult, it's not valuable. These beliefs are so deeply embedded in our consciousness that most people can't even imagine what it would feel like to allow wealth instead of forcing it. And the financial industry profits from keeping you in this force-based paradigm. Think about it. If you knew how to allow wealth naturally, if you understood how to work with quantum shift power, would you need their complicated investment strategies, their fear-based marketing, their products that promise to solve problems you didn't even know you had? The entire economy is built on keeping you in a state of not enough, because people who feel abundant don't buy out of desperation. But you're here, listening to this, because some part of you already knows there's another way. Some part of you has experienced moments where things flowed effortlessly, where opportunities appeared at exactly the right time, where you felt held and supported by something larger than your individual effort. Those weren't accidents. Those were glimpses of your quantum shift power in action. Those were moments when you accidentally aligned with the natural flow of abundance instead of swimming against it. So what does it actually look like to stop forcing and start allowing? How do you activate quantum shift power in practical terms? It begins with understanding that your consciousness is not located in your brain. Consciousness is a field, and you are a focal point of awareness within that field. When you realize this, when you truly get that you're not separate from the universe but an expression of it, everything changes. Your desires aren't random. They're not selfish wants that you need to justify or earn. Your desires are the universe expressing itself through you, calling you toward experiences that will serve not just you, but the whole. When you want to create wealth, that desire is life force moving through you, asking you to become a channel for abundance so that you can contribute your unique gifts to the world. But when you force, you pinch off that flow. You create resistance in the very channel that's trying to serve you. It's like putting a kink in a garden hose and then wondering why no water is coming out. The water is there, the pressure is there, but you've created an obstruction through your own effort to control the flow. Allowing means removing the kinks. It means trusting that the universe knows how to deliver your desires in ways that are better than anything you could orchestrate through force. It means staying open to possibilities you haven't considered, paths you haven't imagined, solutions that are more elegant than anything your limited perspective could have designed. Now, this doesn't mean you sit back and wait for money to appear in your bank account. Quantum shift power requires what I call aligned action. But aligned action feels completely different from forced action. Aligned action flows from inspiration rather than desperation. It comes from excitement rather than fear. It feels expansive rather than contractive, and it produces results that seem almost magical compared to what you can achieve through force alone. When you're taking aligned action, you feel energized rather than drained. Doors open in front of you rather than slamming shut. People want to help you rather than avoiding you. Resources appear when you need them rather than always being just out of reach. This isn't because you're lucky or special. It's because you're working with the quantum field instead of against it. But here's what most people miss. The shift from forcing to allowing isn't a one-time decision. It's a practice, a way of being that you cultivate moment by moment, choice by choice. Every time you catch yourself pushing, straining, or trying to control outcomes, you have an opportunity to pause, breathe, and ask yourself, how can I allow this instead of forcing it? How can I trust the process instead of trying to control it? This is where the real transformation happens. Not in the big dramatic moments, but in the small daily choices to trust instead of control, to flow instead of force, to allow instead of demand. Each time you make this choice, you're strengthening your quantum shift power. You're training your consciousness to operate from a higher frequency, and you're teaching the universe that you're ready to receive abundance in its highest form. Are you starting to feel the difference between these two approaches? Can you sense the contraction in your body when you think about forcing, and the expansion when you consider allowing? This shift in your body's response isn't just emotional, it's quantum. Your body is constantly communicating with the field around you through what scientists call bioelectromagnetic emissions. When you're in a state of forcing, your heart rhythm becomes chaotic, your breathing becomes shallow, and your electromagnetic field contracts. But when you shift into allowing, your heart finds its natural coherent rhythm, your breathing deepens, and your field expands. The quantum field reads these signals and responds accordingly. Here's what's fascinating about heart coherence research. Scientists at the HeartMath Institute have discovered that your heart has its own neural network, with more neurons sending information from the heart to the brain than the other way around. When your heart is in coherence, it literally changes your brain's ability to perceive opportunities, make decisions, and access creative solutions. This isn't metaphysics. This is measurable science. Your heart's electromagnetic field is 60 times greater in amplitude than your brain's, and it extends several feet beyond your physical body. Now, think about what this means for wealth creation. When you're operating from heart coherence, from that allowing state, you're broadcasting a powerful electromagnetic signal that other people can actually sense, even if they're not conscious of it. Have you ever met someone who just felt abundant, even before you knew anything about their financial situation? They weren't trying to impress you or prove anything. They just had this quality of ease, of trust, of knowing their own value. That's heart coherence in action. That's quantum shift power expressing itself through human presence. But when you meet someone who's forcing, who's desperate to make something happen, you can feel that too, can't you? There's something in their energy that makes you want to step back, to protect yourself, to be cautious about getting involved with them. They might be saying all the right words, but their electromagnetic field is broadcasting scarcity, desperation, need. And the quantum field, which includes other people's consciousness, responds to that signal by creating experiences of resistance, rejection, and lack. This is why networking events often feel so uncomfortable for people who are trying to force their way to wealth. They walk into a room full of potential connections, but because they're broadcasting need and desperation, they repel the very people who could help them. Meanwhile, someone operating from quantum shift power walks into the same room and attracts opportunities effortlessly, not because they're trying harder, but because they're allowing the natural magnetism of abundance consciousness to work through them. Let me share with you how this played out in my own experience, because I spent years trapped in the forcing paradigm before I understood these quantum principles. I used to approach every business opportunity, every potential client, every networking situation with this underlying energy of, I need this to work. I would over-prepare, over-rehearse, and over-effort my way through presentations and meetings, and consistently I would watch opportunities slip away, even when I had everything they said they wanted. The breakthrough came when I realized I was trying to convince people to work with me from a place of not believing I was already valuable. I was unconsciously communicating that they would be doing me a favor by choosing me, rather than recognizing that I had something genuinely valuable to offer. The moment I shifted from trying to get something from them to genuinely wanting to serve them, everything changed. Not because I changed my words or my presentation, but because I changed the consciousness from which I was operating. This is the difference between transactional thinking and abundance consciousness. When you're forcing, you're always calculating, what can I get from this situation? How can I make this work for me? What do I need to do to get them to say yes? But when you're allowing, when you're operating from quantum shift power, you're asking different questions. How can I serve? What value can I bring? How can this interaction benefit everyone involved? The quantum field responds to intention, and intention isn't just what you think you want. Intention is the deepest truth of why you want it. If your deepest intention is to get something because you don't feel you have enough, the field will give you more experiences of not having enough. But if your deepest intention is to express your gifts, to serve others, to be a channel for abundance to flow through you to benefit the world, the field aligns with that intention and creates opportunities that serve everyone. This is why so many people struggle with manifestation techniques. They're trying to use quantum principles to get something from the universe rather than to give something through the universe. They're approaching infinite intelligence like a vending machine. Put in the right combination of thoughts and actions, and out comes the money. But consciousness doesn't work that way. The universe isn't separate from you, dispensing rewards based on your performance. You are the universe expressing itself in human form, and your desires are life force calling you to become a fuller expression of your potential. When you truly understand this, when you feel it in your bones, forcing becomes impossible. How can you force yourself to be yourself? How can you struggle to express what's already within you? It would be like a flower forcing itself to bloom, or a river forcing itself to flow. The flower blooms, because that's its nature. The river flows because that's what rivers do. And you create wealth because that's what conscious beings do, when they're aligned with their true nature. But here's where most spiritual teachings about money get it wrong. They tell you to detach from your desires, to not care about money, to focus only on serving others and trust that abundance will somehow appear. This creates a different kind of resistance, a spiritual bypassing that's just as limiting as forcing. True allowing isn't about not caring. It's about caring deeply while holding your desires lightly. It's about wanting wealth not because you're incomplete without it, but because you're excited about what you can create and contribute when you have it. Think about a master musician playing a complex piece. They care deeply about the music, they've practiced for years to develop their skill, and they're completely committed to excellence. But when they perform, they're not forcing the notes. They're allowing their training, their talent, and their passion to flow through them. They're in a state of relaxed focus, of effortless effort. This is what quantum shift power looks like in action. You care deeply, you prepare thoroughly, but when it's time to perform, you trust the process and allow your highest self to express through you. The wealthy operate this way instinctively. They care about their businesses, their investments, their financial goals, but they hold them lightly. They make plans, but they're flexible when better opportunities appear. They work hard, but they don't struggle. They're ambitious, but they're not desperate. They understand that wealth is a byproduct of value creation, and value creation flows naturally when you're aligned with your gifts and serving something larger than yourself. This is why you'll often hear successful entrepreneurs say things like, "I don't feel like I work." It's not because they're lazy or because they don't put in effort. It's because they've found the sweet spot where their natural talents, their genuine interests, and market needs intersect. They've discovered how to make money by being themselves rather than by trying to be someone else. They've learned to allow their authentic value to emerge, rather than forcing themselves into strategies that don't fit their nature. But our educational system doesn't teach us this. We're taught to fit into predetermined roles, to follow prescribed paths, to succeed by conforming rather than by expressing our uniqueness. We're conditioned to believe that if we're not struggling, we're not working hard enough. We're programmed to think that ease equals laziness, that flow equals lack of commitment, that if money comes easily, somehow we don't deserve it. These beliefs create what I call quantum interference. Just like radiostatic blocks clear reception, limiting beliefs about money and success block your ability to receive the abundance that's always flowing toward you. Every time you think, "I have to work harder," you're creating interference. Every time you believe money is hard to come by, you're blocking the signal. Every time you feel guilty about wanting wealth, you're introducing noise into the quantum field. Clearing this interference isn't about positive thinking or affirmations, although those can be helpful tools. It's about recognizing that these beliefs aren't true. They're just programs you've inherited from a culture that profits from your struggle. The truth is that the universe is abundant by nature. Look around you. Nature doesn't struggle to create beauty, complexity, and abundance. Trees don't force themselves to grow. Flowers don't strain to be beautiful. Stars don't struggle to shine. Abundance is the natural state of existence, and scarcity is the artificial condition created by resistance to that flow. When you align with this truth, when you allow yourself to remember that abundance is your birthright, quantum shift power activates automatically. You stop swimming against the current and start flowing with it. You stop trying to create abundance and start allowing it to express through you. You stop being someone who needs money and start being someone through whom money flows to serve the world. This shift changes everything about how you approach wealth creation. Instead of asking, "How can I make more money?" you start asking, "How can I serve at a higher level?" Instead of focusing on what you can get, you focus on what you can give. Instead of trying to convince people to pay you, you become so valuable that people seek you out. Instead of chasing opportunities, you become the kind of person opportunities chase. But this transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always comfortable. When you start operating from quantum shift power, when you begin allowing instead of forcing, you might initially feel like you're not doing enough. Your ego, which has been trained to equate effort with worthiness, might panic and try to pull you back into old patterns of struggle and strain. This is normal. This is part of the process. The key is to trust the process even when it feels counterintuitive. Trust that inspired action is more powerful than desperate action. Trust that aligned effort produces better results than forced effort. Trust that the universe is always working in your favor, even when you can't see how. This trust isn't blind faith. It's based on understanding how quantum mechanics actually works at the level of consciousness and manifestation. Here's a practical exercise that can help you experience the difference between forcing and allowing. Think of a financial goal you're currently working toward. Now imagine yourself achieving that goal through force, through grinding and pushing and making it happen through sheer willpower. Notice how that feels in your body. Notice the tension, the contraction, the sense of swimming upstream. Now imagine achieving the same goal through allowing, through staying aligned with your values, following your inspiration, and trusting that the right opportunities will appear at the right time. Notice how this feels different. Notice the expansion, the ease, the sense of being supported by life itself. Both approaches might lead to the same external result, but the journey will be completely different, and the person you become in the process will be completely different. When you force your way to wealth, you might achieve financial success, but you'll be stressed, exhausted, and disconnected from your authentic self. When you allow wealth to flow through aligned action, you not only achieve financial success, but you become more of who you truly are in the process. This is why quantum shift power is so much more than a manifestation technique. It's a way of being that transforms not just your bank account, but your entire experience of life. When you learn to allow instead of force, when you discover how to work with the quantum field instead of against it, you don't just create wealth. You create a life of meaning, purpose, and genuine fulfillment. The beautiful thing about quantum shift power is that it works regardless of your current circumstances. It doesn't matter how much money you have right now, what your background is, or what challenges you're facing. The quantum field doesn't discriminate. It responds to consciousness, and consciousness can shift in an instant. The moment you choose allowing over forcing, the moment you align with abundance instead of scarcity, the field begins to reorganize around your new frequency. But here's what I want you to understand. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up your dreams. Quantum shift power is actually more ambitious than forcing, not less. When you're allowing, when you're operating from this expanded consciousness, you become available to possibilities that your limited perspective could never have imagined. You become a co-creator with the universe itself, and the universe has much bigger plans for you than your ego could ever conceive. Think about the most successful people throughout history. They weren't successful because they forced their way to the top. They were successful because they found a way to align their personal vision with something larger than themselves. They became channels for innovation, for progress, for solutions that served humanity. They discovered how to make their individual success inseparable from collective benefit. This is the highest expression of quantum shift power. When your desire for wealth becomes a desire to serve, when your ambition becomes a vehicle for contribution, when your success lifts others up rather than putting them down, you tap into a level of creative power that most people never experience. You become what I call a wealth catalyst, someone who doesn't just accumulate resources, but who uses those resources to create more value, more beauty, more possibility in the world. Are you beginning to sense the profound difference between these two approaches to wealth? Can you feel how forcing contracts your possibilities while allowing expands them infinitely? This expansion isn't just a feeling. It's a measurable change in your brain's neural pathways. Neuroscientists have discovered that when you're in a state of stress and forcing, your brain literally shrinks its perception. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for creative problem-solving and strategic thinking, goes offline. Your brain enters what researchers call cortical inhibition, where you can only access familiar, habitual responses. You become trapped in what you already know, recycling the same strategies that got you to where you are now. But when you shift into allowing, when you activate quantum shift power, your brain enters what neuroscientists call a gamma state. This is a high-frequency brainwave pattern associated with breakthrough insights, expanded awareness, and access to information that seems to come from beyond your individual knowledge. In gamma states, different regions of your brain that normally don't communicate begin to form new connections. You literally become more intelligent, more creative, more capable of perceiving solutions that were invisible to you just moments before. This is why so many breakthrough innovations come not from forcing or grinding, but from moments of relaxation, play, or what seems like doing nothing. The greatest discoveries in science, the most successful business strategies, the most profitable innovations often emerge when the conscious mind stops trying so hard and allows deeper intelligence to surface. Einstein called this combinatory play. Tesla described receiving his inventions in moments of quiet contemplation. Steve Jobs talked about the importance of meditation and stillness in accessing breakthrough ideas. They weren't being lazy or avoiding work. They were accessing a level of intelligence that's only available when you stop forcing and start allowing. They understood intuitively what quantum physics now proves scientifically. Consciousness isn't produced by your brain, it's accessed through your brain, and the quality of that access depends entirely on your state of being. When you're forcing, you're accessing consciousness through the filter of fear, scarcity, and limitation. When you're allowing, you're accessing consciousness through the filter of trust, abundance, and infinite possibility. Same consciousness, completely different information available to you. It's like trying to browse the internet through a dial-up connection versus high-speed fiber optic. The internet is the same, but your capacity to access and utilize information is completely different. This is why people operating from quantum shift power often seem to have access to opportunities, insights, and resources that others can't see. They're not more privileged or more talented. They're accessing the same field of infinite intelligence that's available to everyone, but they're doing it from a state of consciousness that allows for clearer reception. They've learned to tune their internal receiver to frequencies of abundance rather than frequencies of lack. But here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't about pretending you don't have challenges or ignoring practical realities. Quantum shift power doesn't mean you stick your head in the sand and hope for the best. It means you approach challenges from a completely different state of consciousness. Instead of seeing problems as evidence of your limitations, you see them as invitations to grow. Instead of viewing obstacles as proof that wealth is hard to come by, you recognize them as the universe's way of preparing you to handle greater abundance. Every challenge you face on your wealth journey is actually quantum shift power in disguise. Think about it this way. If you received $1 million right now, today, would you be able to handle it wisely? Would you have the consciousness, the skills, the emotional maturity to steward that wealth in a way that serves not just you, but everyone your wealth touches? Or would you make decisions from the same level of consciousness that created your current financial situation? The universe isn't withholding wealth from you. It's preparing you to receive wealth in a way that expands rather than contracts your life. Every challenge you overcome, every skill you develop, every limiting belief you transcend, is increasing your capacity to be a beneficial presence in the world when greater resources flow through you. This is why forcing doesn't work long-term. Even if you manage to accumulate wealth through force, you won't have developed the consciousness to maintain it or use it wisely. But when you allow your wealth to emerge through aligned action, through serving others and expressing your authentic gifts, you develop what I call abundance consciousness naturally. You learn to see money as energy, as a tool for creation rather than just consumption. You understand that true wealth isn't about having enough for yourself. It's about having enough to contribute meaningfully to the world around you. This shift in perspective changes everything about how you relate to money. Instead of hoarding resources out of fear that there won't be enough, you circulate them freely, knowing that circulation creates more flow. Instead of competing with others for limited resources, you collaborate to create new value that benefits everyone. Instead of measuring your worth by your net worth, you measure your impact by how much value you create and how many lives you touch positively. When you operate from this consciousness, money flows to you not because you need it, but because you can be trusted with it. The quantum field recognizes that you'll use resources to create more resources, that you'll invest in solutions rather than problems, that you'll be a beneficial force in the economic ecosystem rather than just a consumer within it. This is what separates truly wealthy people from those who just have a lot of money. Wealthy people understand that they're stewards of resources, not owners of them. They know that money flows through them to serve purposes larger than their individual desires. They've learned to align their personal financial goals with collective benefit, and this alignment creates a powerful magnetic force that attracts opportunities, partnerships, and resources that serve everyone involved. But achieving this level of consciousness requires what I call quantum courage. It takes courage to stop forcing when everything in your culture tells you to push harder. It takes courage to trust the process when you can't see how things are going to work out. It takes courage to value your authentic gifts when the market seems to reward conformity. It takes courage to believe in abundance when evidence of scarcity surrounds you. This courage isn't reckless or naive. It's based on a deep understanding of how reality actually works at the quantum level. When you understand that your consciousness is constantly creating your experience, that your beliefs are literally shaping your reality, that your emotional state is broadcasting instructions to the quantum field, courage becomes the only logical response. Why would you choose fear when you know that fear creates more of what you're afraid of? Why would you choose scarcity consciousness when you know that abundance consciousness creates abundant experiences? The shift from forcing to allowing, from scarcity to abundance consciousness, isn't always smooth or linear. You might find yourself moving back and forth between these states, sometimes operating from quantum shift power, and sometimes falling back into old patterns of struggle and strain. This is completely normal. Consciousness evolution happens in waves, not straight lines. The key is to be gentle with yourself during this transition. Every time you catch yourself forcing, every time you notice yourself operating from fear or desperation, you have an opportunity to pause, breathe, and ask yourself, how would I approach this situation if I knew I was already abundant? How would I make this decision if I trusted that the universe was supporting me? What would I do right now if I knew that I was a valuable contribution to the world exactly as I am? These questions aren't just philosophical exercises. They're practical tools for shifting your consciousness in real time. Every time you ask these questions and genuinely consider the answers, you're training your brain to access higher frequencies of thought and emotion. You're literally rewiring your neural pathways to default to abundance consciousness rather than scarcity consciousness. And here's what's remarkable. The more you practice operating from quantum shift power, the more natural it becomes. What initially requires conscious effort eventually becomes your automatic way of being. You start to embody abundance consciousness so completely that forcing becomes impossible. You can't fake this level of transformation. It has to be genuine, and when it is, other people can sense it immediately. This authentic embodiment of abundance consciousness is what creates true magnetism. People are drawn to you not because you're trying to attract them, but because you genuinely have something valuable to offer. Opportunities come to you not because you're chasing them, but because you've become the kind of person opportunities naturally flow toward. Wealth accumulates around you not because you're grasping for it, but because you've learned to be a beneficial presence that naturally attracts resources. But remember, this isn't about perfection. You don't have to maintain quantum shift power 24 hours a day to experience its benefits. Even small shifts in consciousness create measurable changes in your external experience. Every moment you choose trust over fear, every time you select abundance thinking over scarcity thinking, every instance you pick allowing over forcing, you're sending a new signal to the quantum field and inviting new possibilities into your life. The beautiful thing about this work is that it compounds. Each time you successfully allow instead of force, each time you experience evidence that the universe is actually supporting you, your trust deepens. And as your trust deepens, your ability to allow expands. You become more comfortable with uncertainty, more willing to follow inspiration even when you can't see the whole path, more confident in your ability to navigate challenges from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. This growing trust creates what I call an abundance spiral. The more you trust, the more you allow. The more you allow, the more abundance flows. The more abundance flows, the more evidence you have that the universe is trustworthy. The more evidence you have, the deeper your trust becomes. This positive feedback loop is what creates lasting transformation in your relationship with wealth. Are you starting to feel this shift happening in your own consciousness right now? Can you sense the difference between the contractive energy of forcing and the expansive energy of allowing? What would change in your life if you fully embraced this quantum approach to wealth creation? This isn't just a theoretical concept you can think about and then forget. This is an invitation to completely transform your relationship with wealth, with success, with life itself. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can go back to the old paradigm of forcing, struggling, and trying to make things happen through sheer willpower. Or you can step into quantum shift power and discover what becomes possible when you align with the natural flow of abundance. But here's what I need you to understand. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. You can listen to every video about manifestation, read every book about wealth consciousness, attend every seminar about success, but if you don't actually shift from forcing to allowing in your daily life, nothing changes. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you know. It responds to who you're being moment by moment, choice by choice. So I want to leave you with a practical challenge. For the next 7 days, I want you to catch yourself every time you start forcing. Every time you feel that familiar tension of trying to make something happen. Every time you notice yourself pushing against resistance. Every time you catch your mind spinning and worry about how things are going to work out, I want you to pause. Take 3 deep breaths. Feel your feet on the ground and ask yourself, how can I allow this instead of forcing it? Maybe it's allowing a conversation to unfold naturally instead of trying to control the outcome. Maybe it's allowing yourself to follow an inspiration even when you can't see how it leads to money. Maybe it's allowing yourself to rest when you feel called to rest, trusting that inspired action is more powerful than exhausted action. Maybe it's allowing yourself to say no to opportunities that don't feel aligned, trusting that better ones are coming. Each time you make this choice, each time you choose allowing over forcing, you're not just changing your approach to that specific situation. You're training your consciousness to operate from quantum shift power. You're teaching the universe that you're ready to receive abundance in its highest form. You're becoming the person who naturally attracts wealth because you've learned to embody the frequency of abundance. And here's what I know will happen. Within those 7 days, you'll start to notice synchronicities. You'll have conversations that lead to unexpected opportunities. You'll receive insights that solve problems you've been struggling with for months. You'll find yourself in the right place at the right time, more often than statistical probability would suggest. This isn't magic. This is quantum mechanics in action. But the real transformation happens when you realize that this isn't a technique you use occasionally. This is a way of being you can embody permanently. When quantum shift power becomes your default mode of operation, when allowing becomes more natural than forcing, when abundance consciousness becomes your automatic response to life, you don't just create wealth, you become wealth. You become a living demonstration that the universe is abundant, generous, and supportive. And when you embody this truth so completely that others can feel it in your presence, you become what the world needs most right now. Proof that there's another way. Proof that you don't have to sacrifice your soul to be successful. Proof that wealth and integrity can coexist. Proof that abundance consciousness creates more abundance for everyone, not just for yourself. This is your invitation to step into that role. This is your call to become a demonstration of quantum shift power in action. The world is waiting for people who understand these principles not just intellectually, but experientially. People who have learned to allow wealth to flow through them in service of something greater than their individual needs. If this message has resonated with something deep inside you, if you can feel the truth of these principles in your bones, then hit that subscribe button right now. Not because I need more subscribers, but because you're declaring to the universe that you're ready for this transformation. You're saying yes to quantum shift power. You're choosing allowing over forcing. And drop one word in the comments that captures what you're feeling right now. One word that represents your commitment to this new way of being. When you do this, you're not just leaving a comment. You're making a public declaration of your intention to embody abundance consciousness. You're joining a community of people who understand that wealth creation is ultimately about becoming the fullest expression of who you truly are. The quantum field is listening. Your consciousness is the most powerful technology you'll ever have access to. And right now, in this moment, you have everything you need to activate quantum shift power and allow wealth to flow into your life in ways that serve not just you, but everyone your life touches. The only question is, are you ready to stop forcing and start allowing? Are you ready to discover what becomes possible when you align with the infinite abundance that is your birthright? The universe is waiting for your answer, and that answer isn't in your words. It's in your next choice, your next breath, your next moment of either forcing or allowing. Choose wisely. Choose consciously. Choose from the deepest knowing of who you truly are and what you're truly capable of creating. When you stop swimming against the current and start flowing with the infinite intelligence that created galaxies, that grows forests, that beats your heart without you having to think about it, and that is always conspiring in your favor. Your quantum shift power is already here, already activated, already waiting for you to stop forcing long enough to notice that abundance has been trying to reach you all along.